didn't have in my calendar that we were starting 5 minutes early.
No, no worries. I had sent you an email earlier this week. Welcome everybody. Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and book that is all about helping women earn more and live better. And if you've been following along, I do these daily lives, handing the mic over to different coaches, amazing coaches in our network who help, share our mission and wanting women to succeed, wanting women to have more. And of course, as if you've been following along, you see every coach that we have approaches it in a bit of a different way, whether it was investing strategies with Tess Waresmith, Cynthia Orduña talked about being a multi-passionate person and then integrating that into a focused career path. And Michelle Tillis Liederman is all about connecting and networking and more than that. I mean, really, I think you'll explain yourself best. You're in a nutshell a leadership coach, but there's so much more to that. So I would love if you could just give a little intro to your background, and then we can just dive right into the focus of today's conversation, which is about the 7 mindsets of being a connector, which I'm imagining is kind of the foundation of networking, or at least for me it's been. And then we'll go from there. But thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks for having me on, Claire. I'm so happy to be here. And I love Ladies Get Paid and the idea that we understand our worth. And that's part of what my mission is about, is having people connect in all the different ways, connecting to themselves, their value, their mission, their purpose, their team, their organization, their message, and of course, their network. My background actually is I'm a recovering CPA. I spent 10 years in finance. So know what it's like to feel disconnected to your work a little bit. I'm the author of 4 books. You can kind of see most of them behind my head. I am a speaker, trainer, executive coach, and CEO of a company called Executive Essentials, which does custom, I would say, professional development solutions, whether it's coaching, speaking, training, group projects, and cohorts, and all the good stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I am imagining that some people may want actually our conversation to focus on how do you write a book, since you've done so many, which we'll probably go there. But let's begin with the topic that you chose. So again, if you've been following along, you know that every time I ask a coach on, it's really open-ended. And I start with what topic is most exciting you now. And the one that you wanted to focus on was the 7 mindsets of a connector. So curious why you picked that topic, and then we'll dive into what are those 7 mindsets.
So this is really my heart and passion right now. My most recent book is called The Connector's Advantage, and the subtitle is 7 Mindsets to Grow Your Influence and Impact. And it's these 7 mindsets that I think drive what the Connector's Advantage is, which is faster, easier, better results. Whatever it is you're working on, you're going to get there faster, easier, and better through your connections, through your relationships, and to understand that anyone, and this is why I'm so excited. When I first did the research, I thought, oh, we're all wired a certain way, and you're either a connector or you're not. Oh no, apparently, the research showed that anybody can be a connector. And it's really adopting these mindsets and these behaviors into your interactions that enable the advantage of faster, easier, better results. So that's why I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Awesome. And if you want to just dive right into what those 7, without giving away, the book, maybe what those 7 mindsets are, or starting with one that you found most surprising to you as you were doing the research.
So I'm going to list the 7, and I want you to tell me which one piques your interest, and we can get through as many as we can based on what sparks for you.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I will say to everybody out there listening is that these are not linear. I'm going to kind of give them in the order of the book. Sometimes I mix up 2 of them, but these mindsets are not do one, then do the second, then do the third. It's they enable each other.
Okay.
It's really hard to be conscientious if you don't have a generous spirit with yourself. And it's hard to have a generous spirit if you don't come from a place of abundance. And it's hard to come from a place of abundance if you don't trust, and have a generous spirit if you don't trust. And so you can see that they're really very interrelated. But it starts with being open and accepting. So connectors have an open and accepting mindset. They have a clear vision. They come from a place of abundance. They trust, which is a challenging one for many. They're social and curious. They're conscientious, and they have a generous spirit. So those are the 7 mindsets.
Okay. Okay. And which one, I know the question is now for me of like what piques my interest the most, but I would say, because you commented trust a couple of times, and I'm obsessed with the fact that it's the Latin root of the word of confidence, which is a huge
Mm.
issue for a lot of women. Why is trusting hard? And then what are the kind of steps, if you have suggestions, ways that we can begin to cultivate that for
I
ourselves?
could talk the whole half hour on trust, because it is such a hot topic. And if we think about the goal of building stronger, deeper connections, you can't really do that without trust. And you have to give trust to get trust. Um, I talk about 4 pillars of trust. Now, keep in mind that trust is situational, right? You might trust somebody to give you fashion advice, but not career advice,
Right.
right? I trust my dog to both protect my house and eat my dinner if I leave it unattended, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
trust is not negative or positive. I do an exercise in a lot of my programs around defining trust and what are the things that build it, what are the things that break it, and how do we restore it. And I've never gotten the same definition twice, but in thinking about definitions, 2 really stuck with me. And if you have my book, flip to page 100, the 2 definitions are there, but one is really simple, and it's the expectation of predictability.
Mm.
And I love that clarity because it's not, trust is good or trust is bad. I mean, I can trust you to really hurt my feelings or to offend me or to,
Mhm.
it's what I expect to happen. I'm trusting in that. And the other definition is a little bit more academic, but one of the things that they brought out in the definition is that trust is fluid,
Mhm.
that there's no timeline for creation or destruction, that it is fluid. And all the micro actions that we do on a daily basis can either contribute to building or to breaking trust. So I'm going to lay out the 4 pillars of trust, and then I'm going to take a breath so that I don't just talk at you the whole time. So the 4 pillars are trust is to to access trust is authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and consistency.
Mhm.
And I can
Which
take
are hard, which are each of those things requires so much work.
which one strikes you as like the hardest or the one that you're like,
I think the one that maybe has the most existential agita around is the authenticity question.
oh, interesting. Okay. I actually thought you were going to go with vulnerability. So,
Actually, that would be the other one, because I think a huge issue a lot of us have is perfectionism, and that's the desire to not ever be vulnerable. But that, I think, then leads to authenticity, right? If I'm vulnerable and with my authentic self, which requires me to be human, aka imperfect, so they're totally connected, I think.
I agree with you completely. And I love how you brought them together. So, authenticity, to access authenticity, we need to have an open and accepting mindset. And that open and accepting mindset is not just of others, it's of ourselves as well. And that's what we forget, especially as women. We're really going to make concessions and allowances and understanding for other people. We are, empathetic in by nature, but we're not so great to ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when I talk about having an open, accepting mindset, I talk about, yes, all that stuff to other people and being open to being wrong, and that's all great. Um, you know, but it's also about that self-awareness and recognizing, all the great things about yourself, as well as those attributes that are core to who you are, but not necessarily always working for you. And those are what I call unique charms.
Ooh.
Right?
Go core to who you are. Wait, say that part again. That was really
Unique
interesting.
charms are traits that are core to who you are,
Mhm.
and we don't want to get rid of them. They are pieces of us, but they sometimes work for us and they sometimes work against us. So
Okay.
I'll give you 2 examples. One is my husband. His because we got to pick on the men, right? His unique charm is his humor.
Mhm.
Now, humor is absolutely charming. I mean, he makes me laugh from day one. He still makes me laugh almost 20 years later. I love him for a sense of humor. There are times that he goes for the joke at a really inappropriate times. He just can't even help himself. Like, you know, Chandler on Friends, like, sometimes you can't go for the joke. But we don't want to lose that sense of humor. We want to understand when it is working for us, when to access it, and when to rein it in a little bit and flex ourselves to ensure that it's not eroding the connection we're making with somebody else.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Well, do you have suggestions? I'm sure you do. So I guess what would be your suggestions for somebody who wants to get to know their unique charms a little bit better and then do that exploration of the kind of balance of the positive and the negative?
I love that question. And the best way is through other people, is your stakeholders, your relationships, to get information from them, to seek feedback. So one of the things I talk about in that chapter is the Johari window, which I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with. But for those who are not, I want you to visualize a grid, right? A 4-quadrant square. And at the top, it's things I know about myself. And on the side, it's things that others know about me. And then we match up those things. So things that I know about myself and others know, it's very open. This is me being open. This is sharing of myself.
Mhm.
Things that I know about me that you don't are things that are hidden.
Right.
The way that we lessen what is hidden is through self-disclosure, a willingness to share more of ourselves, to be vulnerable, as we were just talking about. And let me be clear, when I reference vulnerability, I do not mean weakness. I mean openness. Vulnerability is about sharing, not self-deprecating.
Okay.
So,
That's sorry. Continue on. And
yeah, I know. I
somebody
like,
just
I can see the questions. I'm like, let me get through the quadrant and then I'll shut up again. See, my unique charm is that I talk too much. Right. And so my flex is that I always kind of broadcast, I'm going to stop talking. So be prepared to jump in. Right. Like I try to do that more because I can fill up the whole space. Sometimes it works for me. Sometimes it works against me. So now there's things that I don't know about myself that you do. These are my blind spots. This is where we might have our unique charms. And this is where we want to seek information from others that can help us understand. I'll never forget my first semester teaching at NYU back in like 2005. And 60% of my class told me I was intimidating. I was like, that was shocking to me. I'm 4'10". You can't tell on the Zoom screen, but I'm tiny.
Oh, no, I
I'm
know.
like,
I'm also very small too, and people don't think so because I have an enormous head and hair, but you're very small. I'm
yes,
5'3". So yeah.
I got the hair right there with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But yes, I am very petite, and I'm thinking, who could be scared of me? You're all towering over me.
Right.
Um, and so I had to go to my students and say, what am I doing? Why do you think that? And they told me. And with that information, you can make tweaks and adaptations and flexes, which are not changes. They're momentary adjustments in a moment to increase interaction. And some of them were actual changes because they're like, you're a little too controlling of the classroom. I'm like, okay. It was my first semester teaching. Like
Right.
they're scary. Um, so if we want to reduce our blind spots, we need to seek information. And then there's what I don't know, what you don't know. This is the unknown, right? And so there's not much we can do with that except for, seeking more information and exploring.
Mhm, mhm. Um, but in order to kind of solicit and integrate feedback from others requires you to have partly a sense of self. Like it's interesting because you're doing it to understand yourself better, but if there isn't a filter with which you then, can integrate that information, it might put you in a place where either you don't feel good about yourself or you start, operating according to what you think others need you to be. And that's not really aligned with who what you deeply desire. So I'm curious what you might counsel somebody who maybe is very at the very beginning of their career and just feeling like pretty lost and low, self-esteem, how they might approach an exercise like this.
Okay. I have so many thoughts. One is for those that might have a very mean inner critic, right? I said we're a little hard on ourselves.
Mhm.
I want you to be your own best friend. And think about that best friend that you have, that cheerleader, that champion. It could be a parent or an aunt or a coach or whoever it is that whispers in your ear that thing that you need to hear. When they're not there, and even if they are, I want you to be your own best friend. And I want you to give yourself the messages that you need. Catch yourself in the act of the negative self-talk and say, what would a best friend say to me right now if I was saying this to me? Okay. So that just caught my attention. Now, the other piece of this is I have an activity called Your 3 Words. And in the show notes, we can put a link. I think if you go on my website and you can download this activity. And it's a way for you to start to get a sense of what do you think of yourself? What do you think of your personal brand? Let me get really clear on what I think I am known for. right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a little aspirational about what I'd like to be known for, then I can collect some data. And when you collect data, you want to think about how you frame the question. So I always say, get it from multiple sources. Get it from
Right.
friends and significant others and frenemies and exes, because boy, do they have information that's really valuable to you. But when you're getting information from people who might not want to say nice things about you, you want to be really careful about how you phrase the question. And so you might say, tell me one quality that you think is a really great strength of mine. Or tell me one thing that you think would make a big difference if I adjusted it.
Oh,
Right.
it's making it
So,
positive and actionable.
yes, we're not
Yes.
saying, tell me what you think of me and letting them beat us up and then, sitting and crying in the corner for a week.
Mhm.
So really think about how you solicit the information and be specific about the kind of information that you want from sources that might need a little filter.
Mm-hmm. That's also good advice in general. It makes whoever you're soliciting it from, it makes their job easier because you're giving them direction. So that's just generally really good advice. Question about quote elevator pitches. I'll just begin that by saying so many people ask me, they tell me they're struggling with their elevator pitch, and it's like they feel like they need to have one pitch. And I always say, no, it's you have a foundation of a pitch, but you're tailoring it based on who you're talking to, what you're looking for, in the kind of context that you're in. That being said, I'm sure you have thoughts on what the elements are for the foundation of a way to present yourself and to tell your story. So I'm curious if you might have suggestions for folks who want an answer to that question.
I have to be honest, I hate the elevator pitch. I
Ooh,
I it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, because it feels fake. It feels so scripted and it feels inauthentic, and so I do struggle with an elevator pitch in general. When somebody says, "What do you do?" It's probably one of the questions that gives me the most, like, hives, because I'm like, "Well, it depends on the day of the week." Or I'm like, "Well, for fun, I love to go travel and scuba dive and do jigsaw puzzles," and, like, I will take the conversation not where they intended because I find that an easier conversation to have. And now that's not necessarily going to serve what the audience that you're referencing needs. And so
I think that's helpful information though, because you're somebody who has literally written the book on, I would say, networking. I mean, it's more than networking. And to know that you also don't like to condense yourself into 4 sentences is actually extremely helpful. Because I think a lot of people feel like they're the only ones going through this, or they have to conform in a certain way to be successful. So to hear from you that there's other ways to approach this is actually really inspirational, I think.
yes, I'm absolutely there with you in the struggle. You know, why are we pitching, right? We are not pitching, we're connecting. And
Mhm.
so, if you're in a conversation with somebody, I usually say, don't get right down to business.
Mhm.
Like, try to learn something about them that is not business related, because that's where true connection forms. It is about what we like to do, our common causes, values, experiences, dreams, hobbies, habits, people, places. Those are the things that are going to make me go, I want to know you more,
Mhm.
versus what's your job title.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
I can come on here and I can say, I'm Michelle Tillis. I am, one of the top 30 communication professionals in the world, named by global gurus, and I've written 4 books. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, I don't want to have lunch with you. Maybe I want to pick your brain, but I don't really want to get a beer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? Like,
Well, it's intimidating, or it's intimidating. No, it's like, I do wanna learn from you, absolutely, but I'm also intimidated.
or I could just say, I am an author, speaker, trainer, and coach, and stop talking.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know where to go from there.
Right.
But if I then say, well, I am a travel and adrenaline junkie who loves animals and scuba diving, and I'm on a mission to help people communicate to connect.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the work, and I do it lots of different ways. But I'd much rather talk about where your next vacation is.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
that's me.
Mhm.
Like, you can reference something with work, but that's not where I want to have a conversation. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm trying to connect to you.
Mhm. I love that. Do you have tips for folks who are feeling nervous, maybe post-pandemic? I'll just put that in quotations. And I'm curious also in how you the kind of content that you're producing, the way that virtual is now influencing? Does it either, solidify the points that you've already made before, and or have you shifted the way that you're talking about expanding networks now that there is a virtual component in a way that we never had before?
It's such a great question, Claire, and thank you for asking, because I have in the past always been very kind of anti-strategic when it comes to networking. I've
Yeah.
been very organic. It was almost the name of my first book, which was possibly going to be organic networking, but it sounded too much like organic farming, and I didn't think
Yeah.
it. But it was kind of the idea of don't be so strategic, don't be so targeted, just build the relationships that you want to, that you get to. And I have shifted with the pandemic. And I actually wrote a program earlier this year called Intentional Connection in a Hybrid World, because we don't have the frequency and the casualness, the ease of which to have those water cooler conversations. We need to be more intentional about it. And this program has gotten a lot of buzz because it's helping us understand what we need to do intentionally within organizations, of what should be done in person, what should be done in the hybrid world, how can we build it into the agenda, how can we rotate the responsibility with the people on the call to create connections. What are the things that we can do in the virtual environment, like a virtual coffee or a virtual happy hour? I mean, we have so much wine in our house now because so many companies have sent us, we're going to do a virtual wine tasting, and we get all this wine and we're on a Zoom and people are like having their cheese and their wine. I mean, but you know what? This is the environment that we're in now. And I have created connections with people, really strong, deep connections with people that I've never met in person. Many of
Mm,
my coaching clients I'd never seen in person for years.
right. Right. Okay. So in general, do we feel like it's a positive thing? It's just like another tool in the toolbox.
I actually do. And not only that, I actually think, especially for women, there's some advantages to this virtual environment that have evolved. Anecdotally, the research has not fully come out yet, but just to give you guys a little boost, one of the things that's beautiful about the Zoom environment is the shared real estate. We all have an equal amount of real estate on the screen.
Mm,
And if you've got a good mic, you
mhm.
don't have to be loud. You just have to be a little closer to the mic. And
Right.
so you're being heard and you're being seen, where you don't have to be as forceful to be heard or to be seen. And so women are being credited with their ideas a lot more than they used to be in the live environment, which is fabulous and fascinating.
I love that. That's such a good point. Wow,
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that before. I love that. Um, Also time. So I totally get the like being sort of organic with how things unfold, but we do all need to be very intentional with our time, especially if it's so limited. And when I say time, I also mean energy. So to expand our network and also to deepen our network, do you have suggestions around ways that we might be able to carve out more space in our schedule to be intentional?
Yes. One of the chapters on the mindset of abundance talks about this in depth, because we all feel like, one of the things that we feel scarce on is time and energy, especially. And so one of the things I talk about is inviting somebody to do the things that you're already doing. So I've had many meetings over a manicure. No joke. I have had walking meetings. I'm getting my exercise and I'm
Yeah.
putting my AirPods in and I'm connecting with somebody at 8:30 in the morning while I'm doing my 5 miles. I hired somebody that I met at a dog park.
Uh-huh.
So thinking about the things that you're already doing and figuring out who you might invite to do them with you. So invitations are one of those great things. And so now you have made that time so much more highly productive and enjoyable, and you're connecting on, a different level, and it makes you feel closer in that connection. So that's my easy, low hanging fruit suggestion, that anybody out there will think about the things that they do in their week and find one or two of those activities where they can invite somebody in. Not every time, right?
Mhm.
But you have to eat lunch once a week, eat with somebody, right? There's Keith Ferrazzi's book, Never Eat Alone, right? Uh, so that's one thought. The other thought is when we think about conscientiousness and generous spirit, if you're going to do what you say you're going to do and follow up and follow through, you need to be really clear on what you say yes to and what you say no to.
Mhm.
And so to have a generous spirit is not, again, just outward. A generous spirit is also inward, and protecting yourself and protecting your time and protecting your energy, and being able to say yes, and yes if, yes after, yes with, yes when, and no but. Understand yes and no are not one word answers. And when we present our response, that there's more to it than yes or no. And that helps us manage our time, prioritize our time, and manage expectations of somebody else around our time.
Yeah, I think that's so excellent. Out of curiosity, from when you started writing your book, this latest book, The Connector's Advantage, to by the end of it, what had you learned in the process? Oh, I'm sure you learned many things, but I guess something that was either surprising for you or kind of shift, or anything stick out that, piece of wisdom you might want to share in the final minutes?
Absolutely. And it's like you read my mind with that question, because not a lot of people know that when I started writing the book, it was actually called The Connectors Club.
Oh.
And the idea was that the book was about how people are naturally wired to get into this Connectors Club, and this is how you get in. And I thought in the research that I was going to learn that there were certain attributes that they were born with. And I was completely surprised, and the entire book changed, including the title and the entire structure of the book, around the idea that anybody can access these mindsets and these behaviors, and that there really wasn't a very big differentiation in the research between people who designated themselves as non-connectors and those who designated themselves as super connectors. The only major differentiation we saw in the research was the personal satisfaction a connector gets simply from making a connection between two other people. That was really interesting. There is something like some endorphins from making a connection for others that the self-designated connectors were feeling that the self-designated non-connectors were not. Other than that, it wasn't like, I'm naturally more EI, I'm naturally more locus of control, I'm naturally more this. No. But we did see certain things evolve, and that's where the mindsets came from.
Okay, I love that. So for anybody who's telling themselves they can't do it, that's an excuse. You can learn it. And the last thing is, and this is a question. This is something you'd answered for me before, but earlier when we booked this session for today, which is elements of becoming your own biggest champion. This is something I ask every coach that comes on. I don't think there's been a repeated answer. You had a couple. You said relationships, passion/purpose, and drive/energy. Do you want to pick up on any of those and maybe even give like a little tool for a way that somebody can implement it? Yeah.
I think they're all very interrelated. So if you want to be your own champion, if you don't have a passion around your purpose, you won't have energy with it. I always say that energy is contagious. And when you have passion, when you have purpose, you can't help but talk about it.
Right.
I'll never forget, I was in finance for 10 years. I don't know if I mentioned that when I introduced myself, that I'm a recovering CPA. And when I started my transition out, I was working with an animal charity. Love animals, mentioned that, I know. And I was telling everybody at the animal charity, like, yeah, I'm planning and I'm working on this and I'm trying to build this on the side. And I had one of the volunteers come up to me and say, hey, do you want to meet my boss? And the boss was the head of training for investment banking at JP Morgan. Because I was talking about it, because I was passionate, because I was excited, because I was sharing, because I brought energy, I got an opportunity. And so that's why I say, if you feel it, share the enthusiasm, share the excitement, because you will tap into somebody else's desire to help you get where you want to go.
And it's inspiring and it's contagious, to your point. It makes them feel good.
But if you think about the three things I said relationships, purpose, passion, energy, and drive. All three of those are in that one story. It was a relationship that got me, and JP Morgan was my first ever client.
Incredible. You had a really nice transition from your background. You had empathy. You knew what it was like to work in that industry, but then you wanted to approach it from a different angle, more in like learning and development than being as you said, recovering CPA. I love it. So in the last minute, tell everybody how they can find you, follow you, and most importantly, pay you.
I love that. LinkedIn is a great way to find me. You can follow me there. But my best place to start is my website, which is Michelle Tillis Letterman, just like you see it on the screen. Michelle with two L's, TILLIS LEDERMAN.com. And from there, you can find my blog, my YouTube. If you come onto my newsletter, you'll get that activity we mentioned, plus a whole bunch of other goodies and chapters, and all the stuff will be in the show notes. But that is my hub to find me and connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Also, that's my mom's name. So, nice connection there. Really appreciate your time, everybody watching, and best of luck. Now go get paid.